The desert wind carried sand across the rocky terrain as Lieutenant Jake Morrison adjusted his night vision goggles. His team of 6 Navy SEALs had been moving through the mountains of Afghanistan for 3 days, tracking a high-value target who had been planning attacks against American forces. The intelligence was solid, but something felt wrong about this mission from the start. Morrison's team consisted of some of the most experienced operators in the Navy. There was Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, a sniper with over 200 confirmed kills. Petty Officer Williams handled explosives and could disarm almost anything. Thompson was their medic, capable of saving lives under the worst conditions. Davis ran communications, keeping them connected to base. Finally, there was Johnson, their youngest member but already proving himself as a reliable point man. The mission briefing had been straightforward. Their target, a Taliban commander named Hassan Malik, was hiding in a compound approximately 15 miles from their current position. Intelligence suggested he had only a small security detail, maybe 8 to 10 fighters. The plan was simple: get in, capture or eliminate the target, gather intelligence, and extract before dawn. As they moved through the narrow mountain paths, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The local terrain was perfect for ambushes, with countless caves and rocky outcroppings where enemy fighters could hide. He had learned to trust his instincts during his 8 years as a SEAL, and right now those instincts were screaming danger. The team reached their observation point just after midnight. Using high-powered scopes, they surveyed the target compound below. It was a typical Afghan structure, made of mud, brick, and stone surrounded by a low wall. Several buildings were clustered together, with narrow alleyways between them. At first glance, it matched their intelligence reports perfectly. Rodriguez set up his sniper rifle and began counting heat signatures through his thermal scope. "I count 12, maybe 15 individuals," he whispered into his radio. "That's more than we expected, but still manageable." Morrison studied the compound through his own scope. The layout bothered him. There were too many blind spots, too many places where additional fighters could be hiding. He made the decision to observe for another hour before moving in, wanting to get a better sense of the enemy's numbers and movements. During that hour of observation, the team noticed something troubling. Every 30 minutes, a fighter would emerge from one of the buildings and walk to a specific corner of the compound. They would look toward the mountains, scanning the exact area where Morrison's team was positioned. It was as if they knew the SEALs were coming. "This feels like a setup," Williams muttered, checking his equipment for the 3rd time. His demolition charges were ready, but he was starting to wonder if they would need them for escape rather than assault. Thompson, their medic, was reviewing his supplies when he noticed movement on the ridgeline above them. "Boss, we've got movement on the high ground," he reported quietly. Through his scope, he could see figures moving between the rocks, positioning themselves for what looked like an ambush. Davis quickly tried to radio their headquarters for updated intelligence, but his communications were being jammed. Someone was using sophisticated equipment to block their signals, far more advanced than typical Taliban technology. This confirmed Morrison's worst fears. They had walked into a trap. The team was now in an extremely dangerous position. They were on a narrow ledge halfway up the mountain, with enemy forces above them and the target compound below. The path they had used to reach this position was now likely compromised, with hostile fighters moving to cut off their escape route. Morrison gathered his team for a quick strategy meeting. They had 3 options: try to complete the mission despite the obvious trap, attempt to withdraw immediately, or find a defensive position and wait for extraction. None of these options were particularly appealing given their current circumstances. As they discussed their options, Johnson spotted something that made their situation even worse. Through his scope, he could see vehicles approaching the compound from multiple directions. These weren't the typical pickup trucks used by local Taliban fighters. They were military-style vehicles, and there were at least 6 of them. "We're looking at a major operation," Johnson reported. "This isn't just about capturing one target. They're planning something big, and we walked right into the middle of it." The vehicles disgorged approximately 40 additional fighters, all well-armed and moving with military precision. This was no longer a small Taliban cell. It was a significant force that had been assembled specifically to deal with American Special Operations teams. Rodriguez continued his count through the thermal scope. I'm seeing at least 60 hostiles now, and that's just the ones I can identify. There could be more in the buildings and caves. Morrison realized they were facing odds of 10 to 1, possibly worse. His team was skilled, but they were vastly outnumbered and caught in a compromised position. The enemy had clearly been expecting them and had prepared accordingly. As if the situation couldn't get worse, Davis detected the sound of helicopters in the distance. But these weren't American aircraft coming to their rescue. The sound signature was wrong. Someone had called in additional support, and it wasn't friendly. The SEALs found themselves in one of the most dangerous situations any special operations team could face. They were surrounded, outnumbered, and cut off from friendly support. Their communications were jammed, their escape routes were compromised, and enemy reinforcements were arriving. Morrison looked at his team, seeing the same determination in their eyes that had carried them through countless missions before. They were Navy SEALs, trained for exactly this type of situation. Impossible odds were just another day at the office. "Gentlemen," Morrison said quietly, "it looks like we're going to have to fight our way out of this one. But remember, we're not just any soldiers. We're SEALs, and we don't leave anyone behind." The team began preparing for what would likely be the fight of their lives, not knowing that high above them in the darkness, someone else was watching the entire situation unfold through a powerful scope, waiting for the right moment to intervene. The first shots came without warning. Muzzle flashes erupted from multiple positions around the SEALs, turning the quiet mountain night into a deadly light show. Morrison's team immediately took cover behind whatever rocks and boulders they could find, but their position was badly exposed. "Contact front, contact left, contact right," Rodriguez shouted into his radio, though he knew their communications were still jammed. The enemy had positioned themselves in a perfect ambush formation, with overlapping fields of fire that left the SEALs with very few options for movement. Williams immediately began returning fire with his M4 carbine, trying to suppress the enemy positions on their left flank. His training kicked in automatically, and he aimed for the muzzle flashes in the darkness. Every shot had to count because they had limited ammunition and no possibility of resupply. Thompson was pulling security on their right side when a bullet struck the rock inches from his head, showering him with stone fragments. He ducked lower and tried to identify the enemy position. Through his night vision, he could see at least 8 fighters moving through the rocks trying to flank their position. "They're trying to get around us on the right," Thompson called out to Morrison. "I count 8, maybe 10 coming up through the ravine." Johnson, their point man, was focused on the path they had used to reach their current position. As expected, enemy fighters were moving up from below, cutting off their primary escape route. "Exits blocked, boss. We've got multiple tangos moving up the trail." Morrison quickly assessed their situation. They were taking fire from at least 4 different directions, with more enemy fighters moving to surround them completely. Their defensive position was marginal at best, offering limited cover against the increasing volume of enemy fire. Davis continued trying to establish communications with their headquarters, cycling through different frequencies and power levels. The jamming was sophisticated and complete, blocking all their normal radio channels. They were truly on their own. Rodriguez had identified several enemy positions and was engaging them with precision fire from his sniper rifle. Each shot was carefully aimed, and he was achieving good results, but there were simply too many targets. For every enemy fighter he eliminated, 2 more seemed to take their place. The sound of the approaching helicopters was getting louder. Morrison could now identify them as Soviet-era Mi-17 helicopters, likely operated by Taliban forces with Pakistani or Iranian support. These aircraft would bring additional fighters and possibly heavy weapons that could easily overwhelm the SEAL team's defensive position. "We need to move," Morrison decided. "This position is going to be overrun in the next few minutes. Williams, do you have anything that can slow them down?" Williams checked his demolition supplies. He had several charges that could be used to create diversions or block enemy movement. "I can blow that rock formation on our left," he suggested. "It might create enough debris to block their advance from that direction." "Do it," Morrison ordered. "Everyone else prepare to move on my signal. We're going to try for that ridge line above us. It's steep, but it's our only chance." As Williams prepared his charges, the enemy fire intensified. The fighters had realized the SEALs were planning to move and were trying to pin them down. Bullets were striking all around their position, with some coming uncomfortably close to finding their marks. The explosion from Williams' charges lit up the night sky and sent tons of rock cascading down the mountainside. The enemy fire from their left flank stopped temporarily as the fighters took cover from the falling debris. It was exactly the opportunity Morrison's team needed. "Move! Move! Move!" Morrison shouted, and the 6 SEALs began climbing toward the ridgeline above them. The terrain was treacherous, with loose rock and steep inclines, but it was their only escape route. Thompson was helping Johnson navigate a particularly difficult section when a sniper's bullet whistled past his ear. Someone on the opposite ridge had a clear view of their escape route and was trying to pick them off one by one. The shot had been expertly placed, missing by inches. Rodriguez immediately began scanning for the enemy sniper while continuing to climb. Through his scope, he could see muzzle flashes from across the valley, but the distance was extreme even for his specialized rifle. "I've got eyes on their sniper," he reported. "Range is about 800 meters. I can try for a shot, but it's not going to be easy in these conditions." "Take it if you have it," Morrison replied, ducking as another bullet struck near his position. The enemy sniper was clearly skilled and was making their movement extremely dangerous. Rodriguez found a stable shooting position and carefully aimed at the distant muzzle flash. He controlled his breathing, accounted for wind and elevation, and slowly squeezed the trigger. His shot struck the rocks near the enemy sniper's position, but he couldn't tell if he had hit his target. The team continued climbing, but the enemy forces below were not giving up. Fighters were pursuing them up the mountainside, and the helicopters were now overhead, searching for them with powerful spotlights. The SEALs were caught in the open on the steep slope, visible from multiple directions. Davis suddenly grabbed Morrison's arm. "Boss, I'm getting something on the emergency frequency," he whispered urgently. "It's not our people, but someone's trying to make contact." Morrison listened to Davis's radio. Through the static, he could hear a calm, professional voice speaking in clear English. "SEAL team, this is Overwatch. I have eyes on your position. Continue climbing toward the ridge. I'm tracking multiple hostiles converging on your location." The voice was unfamiliar, and Morrison had no idea who Overwatch might be. There were no other American forces operating in this area, at least none that he had been briefed about. But whoever it was seemed to know their situation and was offering help. "Overwatch, this is SEAL 6. Who are you, and what's your position?" Morrison responded quietly into his radio. "No time for explanations. SEAL 6. You have approximately 40 hostiles moving up the mountain below you, and those helicopters are about to start strafing your position. Keep climbing. I'll provide what support I can." As if on cue, one of the helicopters opened fire with what sounded like a machine gun, sending bullets striking the rocks around the climbing SEALs. The team pressed themselves against the mountainside, trying to present the smallest possible targets. Johnson was the first to reach a narrow ledge that offered some protection from the helicopter's guns. He immediately began providing cover fire for the rest of his team as they continued climbing. His position gave him a good view of the enemy fighters below, and he could see they were gaining ground rapidly. Williams was struggling with his heavy demolition pack when another sniper's bullet struck just above his head. The enemy had multiple snipers in position, and they were coordinating their fire to make the SEALs' movement as difficult as possible. Thompson, their medic, noticed that Johnson had been hit by rock fragments from the helicopter's strafing run. Blood was running down the point man's face, but he continued fighting without complaint. Thompson made a mental note to treat the wounds as soon as they reached a more secure position. The mysterious Overwatch voice came through their radio again. "SEAL 6, I'm going to engage the helicopters. When you see the fireworks, continue moving toward the ridge. There's a cave system about 200 meters north of your current position." Morrison had no idea who their mysterious helper was, but at this point, he was willing to accept help from anyone. His team was running low on ammunition. They were outnumbered by at least 10-1, and their situation was deteriorating rapidly. Suddenly, a streak of light crossed the night sky, and one of the helicopters exploded in a brilliant fireball. The aircraft crashed into the mountainside below, sending a column of fire and smoke into the air. The remaining helicopter immediately broke off its attack and began evasive maneuvers. "Who the hell was that?" Williams asked in amazement as they watched the burning wreckage tumble down the mountain. Morrison had no answer, but he wasn't about to waste the opportunity. "Move, head for that cave system," he ordered, and the team resumed their desperate climb toward safety. The cave entrance was hidden behind a cluster of large boulders, barely visible even with night vision equipment. Morrison's team squeezed through the narrow opening one by one, grateful to finally have solid protection overhead. The mysterious Overwatch had guided them to exactly the right place. Inside the cave, Thompson immediately began treating Johnson's wounds by the dim light of a red-filtered flashlight. The rock fragments had cut several gashes across the point man's forehead and cheek, but nothing that would prevent him from continuing the mission. How did whoever that was know about this cave? Williams wondered aloud as he checked his remaining demolition charges. The cave system appeared to extend deep into the mountain, with several passages leading in different directions. Rodriguez positioned himself near the entrance, using his rifle scope to monitor the enemy forces below. Through his thermal imaging, he could see approximately 30 fighters spread across the mountainside, searching for the SEAL team's position. They were moving systematically, checking every possible hiding spot. Davis was still monitoring the emergency frequency, hoping to re-establish contact with their mysterious benefactor. The voice came through clearly, as if the speaker was much closer than before. "SEAL 6, this is Overwatch. You're secure for the moment, but they'll find that cave eventually. You need to keep moving." Morrison keyed his radio. "Overwatch, we need to know who you are and what your capabilities are. We can't operate blind." There was a long pause before the reply came. "I'm someone who doesn't officially exist, working for an organization that isn't supposed to be here. Let's just say I have a long-range rifle and a very good view of your situation. The cave system connects to an old Mujahideen tunnel network from the Soviet War. Follow the main passage north for about half a mile." The revelation that they were dealing with some kind of black operations specialist raised more questions than it answered. Morrison had heard rumors about deep cover operatives working in Afghanistan, but he had never encountered one personally. Whoever this person was, they had sophisticated equipment and detailed knowledge of the local terrain. Johnson, his wounds now bandaged, was examining the cave walls with his flashlight. "These tunnels are definitely man-made," he reported. "Look at these support beams. This is Soviet-era construction, probably built during their occupation." The tunnel system was indeed extensive, with carved passages that had been reinforced with timber and concrete. The Mujahideen had used similar networks throughout Afghanistan during their war against the Soviets, and many had been forgotten or abandoned over the years. Thompson was checking their medical supplies when he noticed something concerning. "Boss, Rodriguez is bleeding," he said quietly. Their sniper had taken a piece of shrapnel in his shoulder during the helicopter attack, but hadn't mentioned it. Rodriguez waved off Thompson's concern. "It's just a scratch. I can still shoot." But when he tried to lift his rifle, he winced in pain. The wound was more serious than he was admitting. "Let Thompson look at it," Morrison ordered. "We need you at full capacity." He knew that Rodriguez's sniper skills might be their only advantage in the current situation. As Thompson worked on Rodriguez's shoulder, the radio crackled again. "SEAL 6, you have company heading for the cave entrance. 6 fighters armed with automatic weapons and grenades. They'll reach your position in about 3 minutes. Morrison quickly assessed their situation. The cave entrance was narrow, which would work in their favor for defensive purposes, but they would be trapped if the enemy decided to use explosives or simply wait them out. They needed to keep moving. "Williams, can you seal that entrance behind us?" Morrison asked. Williams examined the tunnel structure. "I can bring down enough rock to block it, but the explosion will tell everyone in the valley exactly where we are." "Do it anyway. We need to buy time." Morrison made the decision knowing it would eliminate their only known exit, but staying put was not an option. The team moved deeper into the tunnel system while Williams prepared his charges. The passages were narrow and dark, clearly designed for defensive purposes. Every few hundred feet there were wider chambers that could be used for storage or as fighting positions. Davis was having better luck with communications now that they were underground. The rock walls seemed to be providing some protection from the enemy jamming, and he was picking up faint signals from their headquarters. "I think I can get a message through," he reported. "Tell them we're alive but compromised," Morrison instructed. "Request immediate extraction, but don't give our exact position until we know it's secure." The explosion from Williams' charges echoed through the tunnel system, followed by the rumble of falling rock. The cave entrance was now completely sealed, but the enemy would know the SEALs were somewhere in the tunnel network. "Overwatch, came back on the radio with updated intelligence. Good call on sealing the entrance. I count approximately 50 hostiles now searching the mountainside. They're bringing in dogs to track your scent, and there are more vehicles approaching from the valley. The mention of tracking dogs was particularly concerning. The SEAL team had been moving for hours, leaving plenty of scent trails that trained animals could follow. Once the dogs reached the sealed cave entrance, they would know for certain that the Americans were in the tunnel system. Rodriguez, his shoulder now properly bandaged, was studying a map of the area with Morrison. If these tunnels follow the same pattern as other Mujahideen networks, there should be multiple exits, he said. Most of them built escape routes every quarter mile or so. Johnson was scouting ahead when he discovered something that changed their tactical situation entirely. "Boss, you need to see this," he called softly from a side chamber. Morrison followed Johnson's voice and found himself in a large underground room filled with military equipment. There were weapons, ammunition, communications gear, and what appeared to be a small arsenal of explosives. Everything was old but well maintained, dating back to the Soviet occupation. "This is a major weapons cache," Williams observed, examining some of the explosives. "Most of this stuff is Soviet, but some of it's newer. Someone's been maintaining this place." Thompson was checking the medical supplies when he found something unexpected. "There are recent food packages here," he reported. "Some of this stuff has dates from last month." The discovery suggested that the tunnel system was still being used by someone, possibly the same people who had set up the ambush above. Morrison realized they might be walking into another trap, this time underground. Davis's radio suddenly burst to life with their own command frequency. He had finally managed to get through to their headquarters. "SEAL 6, this is base. We show your position is compromised. What is your status?" Morrison took the radio. "Base SEAL 6, we are alive but surrounded. Requesting immediate extraction. Enemy force estimated at 50+ with air support. We are currently in an underground position. Roger, SEAL 6. Extraction team is being scrambled, but earliest arrival is 4 hours. Can you maintain position until then?" 4 hours seemed like an eternity given their current situation. Morrison looked at his team, seeing the same determination that had gotten them this far. "Affirmative, base, we'll hold position. But be advised, enemy has sophisticated jamming equipment and advanced intelligence on our operations." As if to emphasize the point, the sound of explosions could be heard through the rock walls above them. The enemy was using demolitions to search for additional cave entrances, systematically working their way across the mountainside. Overwatch provided another update. "SEAL 6, they're getting closer to finding you. I count 3 separate search teams with dogs, and they're using ground-penetrating radar to map the tunnel system. You need to keep moving." The mysterious helper had equipment that most military units could only dream of. Whoever Overwatch was, they had access to technology and intelligence that suggested a very high level of clearance and support. Morrison made the decision to continue deeper into the tunnel system, hoping to find another exit before the enemy could locate them. His team gathered what useful equipment they could from the weapons cache and prepared to move out. As they left the chamber, Rodriguez noticed something that made him pause. On one of the walls, someone had carved a message in English. "The mountains remember everything, but they tell their secrets only to those who listen." It was clearly recent, carved by someone with modern tools, but what troubled Rodriguez most was that the carving was still warm to the touch, as if someone had been there very recently indeed. The tunnel system proved to be far more complex than anyone had anticipated. After moving through the network for nearly an hour, Morrison's team encountered branching passages, hidden chambers, and what appeared to be a sophisticated communication center that definitely hadn't been built during the Soviet era. Davis was examining the communication equipment when he made a startling discovery. "Boss, this gear is American," he whispered. "And it's current. Some of this stuff is newer than what we're carrying." The communication center contained multiple radio systems, satellite uplinks, and computer equipment that would have been worth millions of dollars. Everything was carefully maintained and appeared to be in active use. Power was being supplied by what looked like a small nuclear battery, technology that was highly classified. Johnson was providing security at the entrance when he heard footsteps echoing through the tunnels behind them. "We've got movement," he reported quietly. "Someone's in the tunnel system with us." Morrison gathered his team for a quick discussion. They had three options: continue forward through unexplored tunnels, investigate the communication center further, or prepare to fight whoever was approaching from behind. None of these options were particularly appealing. Thompson was checking his medical pack when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. "Guys, look at this," he said, pointing to a small device attached to one of the communication consoles. It was a motion detector, and it was actively tracking their presence in the chamber. "We're being monitored," Rodriguez realized. "Whoever owns this equipment knows exactly where we are and what we're doing." Williams immediately began checking for booby traps and explosive devices. If they had stumbled into someone else's operation, there was a good chance the area was rigged with defensive measures. His training told him to assume the worst. The radio crackled with their mysterious helper's voice. "SEAL 6, you've found something you weren't supposed to see. Continue moving north and don't touch anything in that room. There are people who would kill to protect those secrets." Morrison keyed his radio. "Overwatch, what exactly are we looking at here? Whose equipment is this?" "Equipment that doesn't officially exist, operated by people who officially don't exist, supporting operations that officially never happened. Keep moving and forget what you've seen." The footsteps behind them were getting closer, and Johnson could now hear voices speaking in English. But these weren't enemy fighters. They sounded like American soldiers, possibly Special Operations Forces. "Identify yourselves," a voice called out from the darkness behind them. "You are in a restricted area." Morrison made a split-second decision. "Navy SEALs Operation Thunderbolt," he called back, using their mission code name. "We're Americans." Three figures emerged from the shadows, dressed in equipment that was similar to SEAL gear but somehow different. Their faces were painted with camouflage, and they carried weapons that Morrison didn't immediately recognize. They moved with the confidence of elite operators. "You're not supposed to be here," the lead figure said. His voice was calm but carried clear authority. "This area is classified beyond your clearance level." Rodriguez studied the newcomers through his rifle scope. Their equipment was definitely American, but it was more advanced than anything he had seen before. Their uniforms bore no unit insignia, and their weapons appeared to be customized versions of standard military firearms. "We're trying to evade a hostile force," Morrison explained. "We didn't know this tunnel system existed." The mysterious soldier nodded. "We know about your situation. We've been monitoring your communications and tracking the enemy forces above." He paused. "We're going to help you get out of here, but you'll never speak about what you've seen." Thompson realized these must be the people behind the sophisticated communication center. They were clearly operating some kind of black project in this area, possibly intelligence gathering or special reconnaissance. Davis was impressed by their communication equipment, but also concerned about the security implications. If there were American forces operating in this area without his team's knowledge, it suggested compartmentalized operations at a very high level. Williams was studying their weapons and equipment when he noticed something interesting. These soldiers were carrying explosives that were far more advanced than anything in the regular military inventory. Their demolition charges were compact and powerful, suggesting access to cutting-edge technology. "There's an exit about half a mile ahead," the lead soldier informed them, "but the enemy has positioned forces near all the known entrances. We're going to have to create a diversion to get you out." Johnson was wondering about the identity of these mysterious soldiers when one of them spoke directly to him. "You did good work up there, SEAL. Your team fought well against impossible odds." The fact that they had been observing the entire firefight raised more questions about who these people were and what they were really doing in Afghanistan. Their level of intelligence and surveillance capability was extraordinary. Overwatch came back on the radio with updated enemy positions. "SEAL 6. The hostile forces have found the sealed cave entrance and are using explosives to clear it. They'll be in the tunnel system within 30 minutes. Morrison looked at the mysterious soldiers. "Is Overwatch one of your people?" The lead soldier smiled slightly. "Overwatch is the reason you're still alive. He's been protecting you since this operation began." Rodriguez was putting pieces together in his mind. The precision of the helicopter attack, the detailed knowledge of the tunnel system, the sophisticated intelligence updates, it all pointed to a major special operations unit that operated outside normal military channels. Thompson was treating a minor injury on one of the mysterious soldiers when he noticed a tattoo that was partially visible under the man's sleeve. It appeared to be some kind of special operations unit insignia, but not one he recognized. The group began moving through the tunnel system again, with the mysterious soldiers taking point. They moved with complete confidence, clearly familiar with every passage and chamber. Their night vision equipment was superior to what the SEALs were carrying. Davis was amazed by their operational security. Despite having sophisticated communication equipment, they maintained strict radio discipline and used coded language that would be meaningless to anyone intercepting their transmissions. Williams was learning from their demolition techniques as they moved. The soldiers had placed small charges at key points throughout the tunnel system, ready to collapse sections behind them if necessary. Their planning was meticulous. The exit we're heading for opens into a ravine about 2 miles from your original infiltration point, the lead soldier explained. There's a landing zone suitable for helicopter extraction, but you'll have to fight your way to it. Johnson was impressed by their tactical knowledge. They knew the terrain better than the local map suggested, with information about hidden approaches and defensive positions that wasn't available through normal intelligence channels. The sound of explosions behind them indicated that the enemy forces had breached the sealed cave entrance and were now in the tunnel system. Time was running out, and the race to reach safety was about to become even more desperate. Morrison realized that his team had stumbled into something much larger than their original mission. These mysterious soldiers represented a level of special operations that most people never knew existed, operating in the shadows with technology and capabilities that were years ahead of conventional forces. As they approached the final section of tunnels leading to the exit, Overwatch provided one last update. SEAL 6, I have eyes on the extraction point. It's clear for now, but enemy forces are converging on the area. You'll have a narrow window to reach the landing zone. The mysterious soldiers prepared to part ways with Morrison's team at the tunnel exit. Remember, their leader said quietly, you were never here and you never saw us. Some secrets are worth more than lives. The tunnel exit opened into a narrow ravine just as the mysterious soldiers had promised. Morrison's team emerged into the pre-dawn darkness, grateful to breathe fresh air again but immediately alert for enemy presence. The landscape was unfamiliar, with rocky walls rising on both sides and a winding path that led toward lower ground. Rodriguez immediately set up Overwatch position while the rest of the team oriented themselves. Through his scope, he could see the lights of enemy vehicles moving across the valley floor, searching for any sign of the escaped Americans. The enemy force had grown substantially since their initial contact. Davis was finally able to establish clear communication with their headquarters now that they were out of the tunnel system. Base, this is SEAL 6. We are at the extraction point and ready for pickup. Recommend immediate extraction. Enemy forces are converging on our position. Roger, SEAL 6. Extraction team is inbound, ETA 15 minutes. Be advised, we're tracking significant enemy activity in your area. You may need to defend the landing zone. Thompson was conducting a quick medical check on all team members while they waited. Johnson's wounds were healing well, Rodriguez's shoulder was stable, and everyone else had only minor cuts and bruises from their mountain ordeal. Considering what they had been through, the team was in remarkably good condition. Williams was using the time to inventory their remaining ammunition and equipment. They were running low on everything, with most team members down to their last few magazines. If they had to fight their way to extraction, it would be a close thing. Overwatch came back on their radio with crucial intelligence. SEAL 6, I count 3 enemy teams moving toward your position from different directions. Total strength approximately 30 fighters. The closest group will reach you in about 10 minutes. Morrison studied the terrain around their position. The ravine offered some natural defensive advantages, with rocky walls that would channel enemy approaches and provide cover for his team. But they would be exposed to fire from the high ground if the enemy gained the ridges above them. Johnson was scouting forward positions when he spotted the first enemy fighters moving through the rocks above them. Contact, he called softly. I've got eyes on 6 tangos, 800 meters north, moving toward the ridgeline. Rodriguez shifted his rifle to cover the area Johnson had identified. Through his scope, he could see the enemy fighters moving carefully through the terrain, clearly experienced in mountain warfare. They were armed with automatic weapons and appeared to be carrying rocket-propelled grenades. Davis received an update from the extraction team. SEAL 6, be advised, extraction is delayed. We have enemy air activity in the area, and our helicopters are taking evasive action. Stand by for updated ETA. The news was not what Morrison wanted to hear. Every minute they remained in position increased the likelihood of being overwhelmed by superior enemy numbers. His team needed to be extracted before the enemy could bring their full force to bear. Thompson was setting up a casualty collection point when the first enemy shots rang out. Bullets struck the rocks around their position, and the distinctive crack of high-velocity rounds echoed through the ravine. The fight they had been trying to avoid was about to begin. "Take cover," Morrison shouted as his team scattered to defensive positions among the rocks. The enemy had excellent fields of fire from the high ground, and the SEALs were caught in a natural kill zone. Rodriguez immediately began engaging enemy targets with precision fire from his sniper rifle. His first shot took down an enemy fighter who was positioning a rocket launcher, preventing what could have been a devastating attack on their position. Williams was laying down suppressive fire with his assault rifle when he noticed enemy movement on their left flank. A second group of fighters was moving to surround their position, using the terrain to approach under cover. "They're trying to flank us," Williams called out while changing magazines. "I count at least 8 moving through the rocks on our left." Johnson shifted position to cover the left approach, immediately engaging the flanking force with accurate rifle fire. His shots forced the enemy fighters to take cover, but they continued advancing using fire and movement tactics. Thompson was pulling security on their rear when he spotted a third enemy group approaching from behind. The mysterious soldiers in the tunnel had been right. Enemy forces were converging on their position from multiple directions. "We're surrounded," Thompson reported matter-of-factly while engaging targets to their rear. "This is going to get interesting." Davis was coordinating with the extraction team while simultaneously providing covering fire. "Base, we are heavily engaged and need immediate support. Enemy forces are attacking from multiple directions. SEAL 6 extraction team is still inbound but facing enemy air defenses. Hold your position as long as possible. Air support is being scrambled." Morrison realized they were fighting for their lives with limited ammunition against a much larger enemy force. His team was skilled and determined, but the odds were overwhelming. They needed help, and they needed it soon. Overwatch provided tactical updates while the firefight intensified. "SEAL 6, I'm tracking additional enemy vehicles approaching your position. You're about to be facing odds of 20 to 1. The situation was desperate, but Morrison's team continued fighting with the professionalism that had carried them through countless missions. Each SEAL was making every shot count, using superior training and discipline to hold off the enemy assault. Rodriguez was engaging targets at extreme range when a sniper's bullet struck just inches from his position. The enemy had their own marksman, and he was good. The duel between professional snipers began immediately, with both men seeking the perfect shot. Williams was running low on ammunition when he made a crucial decision. "Boss, I'm going to use my demo charges to even the odds," he called out while preparing his remaining explosives. "Do it," Morrison replied, ducking as another burst of enemy fire struck near his position. They needed something to disrupt the enemy attack before they were completely overrun. Williams placed his charges strategically among the rocks where the enemy fighters were advancing. When he detonated them, the explosion sent debris flying and forced the attackers to take cover, buying the SEAL team precious time. Johnson was engaging multiple targets when he noticed something that changed the entire dynamic of the firefight. High above them on the opposite ridge, he could see the distinctive muzzle flash of a large-caliber rifle firing at the enemy positions. "Someone's engaging the enemy from the high ground," Johnson reported. "Long-range fire, very accurate." Overwatch was finally revealing himself through action rather than words. Each shot from the mysterious sniper was perfectly placed, taking down enemy fighters who thought they were in secure positions. The unknown marksman was evening the odds. Thompson was amazed by the precision of the shots coming from the ridgeline. "Whoever that is, he's the best shooter I've ever seen," he commented while treating a minor wound on Davis's arm. Rodriguez was trying to spot the mysterious sniper through his own scope, but couldn't get a clear view of the firing position. "He's shooting from at least 1,200 meters, Rodriguez observed with professional admiration. In these conditions, those are impossible shots. The enemy attack began to falter as fighters started falling to the long-range fire. The mysterious Overwatch was systematically eliminating enemy leaders and heavy weapons crews, disrupting their coordinated assault. Davis received the message they had all been waiting for. SEAL 6 extraction team is 2 minutes out. Mark your position with infrared strobe. Morrison activated his infrared marker just as the sound of approaching helicopters filled the air. American aircraft were finally coming to get them, but the enemy wasn't giving up without a fight. Enemy fighters began concentrating their fire on the incoming helicopters, trying to shoot down the extraction aircraft before they could land. The air filled with tracer rounds and the distinctive trails of rocket-propelled grenades. Overwatch continued providing sniper support, now focusing on the enemy fighters threatening the extraction helicopters. His shots were timed perfectly, eliminating threats just as they prepared to fire on the aircraft. The lead helicopter touched down in the ravine, while the second aircraft provided covering fire with its door guns. Morrison's team began moving toward extraction under intense enemy fire, supported by the mysterious sniper who continued eliminating targets from his hidden position. As the SEALs reached the helicopter, Morrison looked back toward the ridgeline where their unknown protector was positioned. Through the chaos of the firefight, he thought he could see a single figure silhouetted against the dawn sky. But then the image was gone. The helicopter lifted off with Morrison's team aboard, leaving the enemy forces behind in the ravine. As they gained altitude, the sniper fire from the ridgeline stopped and Overwatch disappeared as mysteriously as he had appeared. The flight back to base was conducted in relative silence, with each member of Morrison's team processing what they had experienced during the mission. The helicopter crew provided medical attention and hot coffee, but the SEALs remained alert, knowing that enemy forces might still pose a threat even during extraction. Rodriguez was staring out the helicopter window toward the mountain where their mysterious protector had been positioned. Even with his professional training and years of experience, he had never witnessed shooting of that caliber. The precision and range of those shots defied everything he thought he knew about sniper capabilities. Thompson was conducting a final medical evaluation of his teammates when he noticed something troubling. Davis had taken a bullet graze across his ribs during the final firefight, but he hadn't mentioned it. The wound was minor but needed proper treatment. "You should have said something," Thompson scolded while cleaning and bandaging the wound. "Infection is a serious risk in this environment." Davis shrugged off the injury. "It's nothing compared to what could have happened. We were dead men until that ghost showed up with his rifle." Williams was inventorying what remained of their equipment and ammunition. They had used almost everything they carried, and without the intervention of their mysterious helper, they would have been completely overrun. The mathematical reality was sobering. Johnson was reviewing the tactical situation in his mind, trying to understand how they had survived against such overwhelming odds. The enemy force had been well-trained, well-equipped, and clearly had advanced intelligence about their mission. Yet somehow they had escaped. Morrison was preparing his after-action report when the helicopter pilot handed him a secure communication device. "Sir, you have a priority message from headquarters." The message was brief but significant. SEAL 6 mission debriefing will be conducted by Special Intelligence personnel. Maintain operational security regarding all aspects of your mission. Classification level has been upgraded to compartmented access. The upgrade in classification meant that their mission had political and intelligence implications beyond what Morrison had originally understood. Someone at a very high level was concerned about what his team had experienced. Davis was monitoring communications when he picked up an interesting transmission on a frequency that wasn't supposed to exist. The voice was calm and professional, clearly American, but speaking in code that he couldn't decipher. Then the transmission stopped abruptly. Thompson was thinking about the medical equipment he had seen in the underground facility. Some of it was more advanced than what was available in most military hospitals, suggesting access to experimental or classified medical technology. Rodriguez was still trying to process the shooting skills he had witnessed. The range, accuracy, and timing of those shots represented a level of marksmanship that was almost superhuman. Either the mysterious sniper had access to extraordinary equipment, or he possessed skills that bordered on the impossible. Williams was considering the explosives he had observed in the tunnel system. Some of the charges were unlike anything in the standard military inventory, suggesting development programs that weren't publicly acknowledged. The implications were significant. Johnson was reviewing their escape route when he realized something important. The tunnel system they had used was not random. It had been specifically designed to connect strategic locations throughout the mountain range. Someone had spent considerable time and resources creating an underground network. The helicopter began its approach to their base, and Morrison could see increased security activity on the ground. Additional personnel were present, including individuals who were clearly not regular military. The debriefing was going to be more complex than usual. As they landed, Morrison's team was immediately escorted to a secure facility that had been set up specifically for their return. The debriefing room contained equipment for recording and analyzing their testimony, along with personnel who introduced themselves only by first names. The lead debriefer was a woman who identified herself simply as Sarah. She was clearly intelligence community, probably CIA or NSA, with the kind of security clearance that allowed access to compartmented programs. Her questions were precise and focused. "Tell me about your contact with Overwatch," Sarah began. "What exactly did this individual say to you, and what capabilities did you observe?" Morrison provided a factual account of their radio communications and the sniper support they had received. He was careful to stick to observable facts rather than speculation about identity or organizational affiliation. Rodriguez was questioned extensively about the shooting he had witnessed. Sarah was particularly interested in the range and accuracy of the shots, asking for detailed descriptions of each engagement and its tactical impact. Thompson described the medical and communication equipment they had encountered in the underground facility. Sarah's questions suggested she was familiar with the technology, possibly trying to determine what specific programs or capabilities had been compromised. Williams provided details about the explosives and weapons they had observed. The debriefer was especially interested in the advanced demolition charges, asking for descriptions that would allow identification of specific development programs. Davis was questioned about the communication intercepts and jamming he had experienced. Sarah wanted to know about frequencies, encryption methods, and the sophistication of the enemy's electronic warfare capabilities. Johnson described the tunnel system and the mysterious soldiers they had encountered. The debriefer was clearly familiar with the underground network, asking questions that suggested prior knowledge of its existence and purpose. After several hours of individual debriefings, the team was brought together for a final session. Sarah addressed them as a group, her tone serious and professional. "What you experienced during this mission touches on classified programs that are vital to national security," she explained. "The individual you knew as Overwatch is part of a capability that officially doesn't exist. The same applies to the personnel you encountered underground." Morrison asked the question that had been bothering him since their escape. "Ma'am, how did they know we were in trouble? How were they able to respond so quickly?" Sarah paused before answering. "There are assets in that region that monitor all military operations. When your mission was compromised, protocols were activated to provide support. The details of those protocols are classified beyond your clearance level." Rodriguez was curious about the shooting capabilities he had witnessed. "Ma'am, what kind of equipment allows for that level of precision at those ranges?" "Equipment that doesn't officially exist, operated by personnel who officially don't exist, supporting operations that officially never happened," Sarah replied, using almost the exact words they had heard from Overwatch himself. Thompson raised a concern about operational security. "If there are American forces operating in that area, why weren't we briefed about possible friendly forces?" "Because knowledge of their existence is compartmented at levels far above your mission requirements," Sarah explained. "Even most general officers don't know about these capabilities." Williams was thinking about the implications for future missions. "Ma'am, how do we operate effectively if we don't know about friendly forces in the area?" "You operate exactly as you did," Sarah replied, "with professionalism, skill, and dedication to the mission. When additional support is available, it will be provided. When it's not, you rely on your training and each other." Davis asked about the enemy's advance intelligence on their mission. "Ma'am, how did the enemy know we were coming?" "They were clearly prepared for a SEAL team." Sarah's expression became more serious. "That's an ongoing investigation. What's important is that despite the compromise, you completed your mission and returned safely." Johnson was concerned about the operational implications. "Ma'am, are there other missions that might be similarly compromised?" "All missions carry risks," Sarah replied. "What matters is that personnel like Overwatch are positioned to provide support when American lives are at stake." The Debriefing concluded with stern warnings about operational security and the consequences of discussing classified information. Morrison's team was told that their mission reports would be classified at the highest levels and that they were never to discuss what they had experienced. As they left the secure facility, Morrison looked back at the building where they had spent the day. His team had survived an impossible situation, saved by a mysterious guardian who operated in the shadows. They would never know his real name or see his face, but they would never forget that when they needed help most, someone had been watching over them. The ghost who had taken those perfect shots would remain a mystery, protecting other American forces who found themselves surrounded and outnumbered in hostile territory. In the world of special operations, some heroes never get recognition, operating in the shadows to ensure that others can return home safely. Morrison's team returned to their normal duties, carrying with them the knowledge that there were guardians they would never see, protecting them in ways they would never fully understand. The silent ghost who had saved their lives continued his watch from the mountains, ready to take the shots that would bring other Americans home alive.